السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I'm Dr. Belouafi Mohammed Said. I work as an assistant professor in the University of Qasr Berbah, Wargile, Faculty of New Technology of Information and Communication, Department of Computer Science and Information Technology. In this video, I want to give a summary or content video for the first two chapters of the course that I teach. It is entitled by Descriptive Statistics or Introduction to Probability and Descriptive Statistics. So this work will be presented according to the following plan. Start with the objective of this course, the prerequisite knowledge, the prerequisite assessment, and the first chapter, basic concept and statistical vocabulary. The second chapter, numerical representation of data, and finally I have the final exam of this course and some bibliography. So the objective of this course, at the end of this course, the student should be able to clearly understand statistical study and their key parameters, and identify and distinguish between different types of statistical vocabulary variable. Create graphical representation for each type of variable. Compute and justify key parameters such as expectation, variance, mean, etc. Interpret the result of statistical study and their associated parameters. And in order to understand clearly this course, the student should be familiar with the basic mathematics and the fundamental concept of descriptive statistics. I start this course by some prerequisite assessment, some exercises in order to evaluate the student. And the first chapter is the basic concept and the statistical vocabulary. The objective of this chapter is to introduce the fundamental concept of descriptive statistics and to interpret statistical results for both qualitative and quantitative variables. And this chapter is beginning by the prerequisite test to evaluate the students. And I have some. The first part is to introduce some statistical concepts. This is a statistical concept. Qualitative variables, quantitative variables, frequency, relative frequency, cumulative frequency, increasing cumulative frequency, decreasing cumulative frequency, and decreasing cumulative relative frequencies. The second part is statistical table and the graphical representation of data. Here we introduce this statistical table and graphical representation in the two cases, in the case of qualitative variables and the case of quantitative variables. Also, I put here a video in order to get more detail for the student to make the idea more clear. The third part of this chapter is cumulative curve. I represent or introduce the cumulative curve in the two cases, in the case of discrete quantitative variables and the case of continuous quantitative variables. And at the end of this chapter, I have some quizzes, some exercises to evaluate the students. The second chapter is the numerical representation of data. The objective of this chapter is to summarize data efficiently, measuring center tendency, assessing data dispersion, and facilitate comparison between the different data sets. I begin this chapter by prerequisite test, and the first part of this chapter is to introduce some concepts of measure of central tendency. Uh, I begin by the mode in the two cases, in the discrete case and the continuous case. Also, I introduce the median in the two cases. I define the arithmetic mean in the two cases, in the discrete and the continuous case. I define the harmonic mean in the two cases. I define the geometric mean in the two cases. I define the quadratic mean in the two cases. I define the quartile, the first quartile and the third quartile in the discrete and the continuous case. The second part of this chapter is measure of dispersion, which contain the range. We define the range, the variance, and the standard deviation. And finally, we define the coefficient of variation. This chapter is completed by some quizzes, some exercises to evaluate the students. Finally, we have the final exam of this course. It contains some quizzes, some exercises to evaluate the students. Here we have some references and bibliography, and thank you for your attention.